Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Osterlink. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
Today's guest is a man who's taken lessons forged in the most demanding environments on the planet and turned them into a blueprint for how to live and perform at a higher level. Chris Lee is the author of Beyond the Battlefield, a guide to conquering life's challenges, and Legacy Forged, the 90-day battle plan to take command, build discipline, and forge a life that echoes beyond you. Two books focus on identity, discipline, and personal responsibility. He's a former Green Beret and Special Forces medical sergeant, now performance coach. He is division director of Machines Mentality. What I respect about Chris is that he doesn't deal in service level tactics. His work is about ownership and the reality that if you are not choosing excellence, you're defaulting into mediocrity. Today, we're going to unpack what it really takes to forge discipline and operate at a higher standard. Chris, welcome to the show.
It's an absolute honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I've been looking for this conversation. Obviously you're an author, you're working for Machine Mentality, you're a coach, but before you got into this particular aspect of your life, Green Beret, tell us what got you to become first into the military and then special forces.
Prior to the military, I was working as a youth pastor at a local church, and that was like the best job in the world. And just crushing high schoolers with dodgeballs every week was awesome. um,
That's
no, it was great. I love those guys. Um, amidst that period, I began to question my own faith and wound up stepping away from faith. Which incidentally, I was like, I should probably resign from this particular position, and then began working at this fancy hotel in Virginia. And I remember the night specifically. The dining room was a little short staffed, and so they came to my department and asked for some help delivering food to the patrons in the restaurant. And sure enough, I went out there, loaded up a tray full of food, went out to the guests in the restaurant, started handing out their food. Everybody was super polite. Nobody was rude to me or anything. And I remember on my way back, I got overwhelmingly furious. I was like, Chris, you can do more. Go do more. And so after that night, I went back to my desk and just started Googling military. All right, what can I do? I looked at the Marines and Navy SEALs and all that stuff. And actually, the first recruiter I went to was a Marine recruiter. And I remember the recruiter. He's like, "Dude, why are you trying to get in so late in the game?" I was 28 at the time, 27, 28, and I was like, "I feel like I'm in pretty good shape, man." but eventually, that relationship kind of fizzled out, and so found an Army recruiter, and I was like, "Hey, man, I want to." I've spent several months researching. I want to be special forces. He was like, "All right, let's go do that." Some mishaps happened at MEPS, which is like the physical, where the doctors do like your physical for entrance into the military. And so I couldn't get a special forces contract. So I went in as an infantryman, and while I was at basic, was able to pick up my special forces contract, and then went to selection, and the rest is kind of history. But I remember it was just like a night of frustration and um, lack of contentment with where my current path was headed. And it wasn't bad. Like the job at the hotel was actually pretty cool. I remember part of my job responsibilities was like roasting marshmallows for little kids on the weekends and teaching people how to play frisbee golf. Like looking back, it was kind of cool. Um,
yeah.
but I could like see the path. They were starting to groom me for like management, and I was like, nah, I want to do something different.
Or do you said nah?
I remember in high school, and even in college, I always kind of played it safe. And like if something was going to be too hard and I couldn't quite handle it, I'll back off and I'll do the easier class or whatever. I just got to a point where it's like, man, I am tired of playing it safe. One of the main reasons I joined the military and pursued special forces specifically was I wanted to pursue something where success was not guaranteed. And I wanted to test my mettle and see where I ended up, you know.
What year did you join the military?
Yeah, it was 2012 I went in. I was 28.
So that would have been ISIS coming on to the scene.
Yeah, I mean it was yeah, the height of the conflict. And I kind of buddy. uh, the way I operate is like I kind of I plan everything out in my head and I make all my moves in my mind. And then I start letting people know, like, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. And that's how I pursued the military. Like I had done like 6 months of research. Like what exactly do special forces do? What's the path from day one to selection? Like I knew everything in every phase. And it was at that point, and I've been training for like a year. At that point, I told my family, like my dad, my sister, my aunt, was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about joining the army." At that point, I had already made the decision. I'm like, I'm going, but I'm trying to like ease into it. You know, hey, I'm thinking about joining the military, and dad was super supportive. Jen, my sister, was super supportive. My aunt busted my chops for like 2 hours straight on the phone. She was like, "What are you thinking? You're going to get hurt and blown up." And like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. She eventually came around and was like super proud of me. But yeah, to your point, like, yeah, that was kind of the height of the war and things were still kicking off for sure.
Well, you said you trained for it for a year on your own, even before joining the army itself. How did you find a mentor? How did you know what to do? What did you do?
Yeah, great question. I initially thought about becoming a Navy SEAL. I was like, dude, that'd be dope. And then I realized I'm not a great swimmer. I was like, well, I should probably stick to the land, you know,
The problem.
right. But like while I was at work at the hotel, I was just Googling every day, like workout plans. And I actually found one. I think it was called like SEAL Fit. It was essentially like the Navy SEAL prep.
Market SEAL fit for a
Oh
decade.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, yeah. So like it was great. I essentially worked that program leading up to me actually showing up because I didn't want to be unprepared when I showed up for basic training because it's already stressful, and if you're out of shape, it's even more stressful.
Probably over prepared just for basic now.
Yeah, I think so. I wound up losing a little bit of strength while at basic because basic's the great equalizer. You know, they're trying to get everybody to a particular standard, which means all like the guys that were like super performers. There's a couple guys in my platoon that were just specimens, just like phenoms. But everybody kind of gets muddled down to kind of the same standard. If that makes sense.
You're on SEAL fit watch for a year. You must have been in hell.
I was feeling pretty good.
Awesome. Love
Yeah.
that. Okay, so regular Army, you got a contract to at least try out for Army Special Forces. Going through that whole process, because you shared with us earlier, like you played it safe. Going Army Special Forces, not playing it safe. You don't necessarily know the outcome. You're putting yourself in a riskier situation. What did you learn about yourself going through that whole process?
Yeah, great question. I think a couple of things. One, myself specifically, but literally everybody is capable of more than they expect and more than they anticipate. It just requires the right stimulus, you know, to like dig deeper and like really perform. The other thing I realize is like this term long suffering, which is like an old school version of patience. But the so everybody everybody focuses on like selection for SF. Dude, that's the easy part. And I know that sounds super cliche, but it's like a couple of weeks of like miserableness, but it's just a couple of weeks. The Q course, the Special Forces qualification course, is years, and and particularly if you're a medic, it tacks on like an extra 12 months and 9 to 12 months to the Q course. So so it's every day you got to wake up and look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Yeah, I still want this," because I think the prize at the end is worth it. And I didn't realize I had that kind of patience until I was in the middle of having to exercise it. You know,
You discovered you had a strong enough why to get yourself over the humps of questioning things on occasion.
Indeed. Yeah. And that why is super important in any aspect of life, for sure.
Why medic?
Admittedly, I wanted to be a Charlie, 18 Charlie, which is the engineer on the team, because I wanted to blow things up, and that's what they do. And I actually had a construction background, which would help in that regard too. And I'm based on some test scores and stuff. The cadre at selection, they were like, "You should probably go 18 Delta or try out for the medic route." I was like, "Okay, I'm just happy to be here." And in hindsight, I'm super grateful that was the path that was voluntold to me. Medics, yes, it tacks on an extra year to the queue, but they've got the best job on the team. It's just easier. Like the Charlies, I later found out they're in charge of all of the property that the team owns, and so they've just got binders and binders full of property descriptions and serial numbers, and every year change of command they get. It's just a week of stress, 2 weeks of stress, where they have to lay all that stuff out and account for it.
What myths were busted in your head having gone through this whole thing? Like, what expectations? Like, oh, it wasn't like this. It was like this.
Yeah.
And down.
When people think Green Beret, they often picture like Rambo. At least I did. And and yes, in the story he was a Green Beret, but we don't operate alone. We are always on a team, and that's where the strength is. Having like just absolute incredibly intelligent individuals in their particular field operating together cohesively as a unit, moving towards a particular objective. That is a game changer. And so that was kind of one, realizing that how important team is. That was pretty vital throughout not only the Q course but actually being on a team. And then the other thing was realizing that we're just dudes. And what I mean by that is there are occasions like where our team would be training with like regular infantry units, and it was so much fun. I actually loved working with those guys because they're just eager to learn, and so we'd be clearing houses, teaching them CQB and stuff, and and sometimes it almost inevitably somebody would ask like, "Dude, what's it take to get to your level?" And my team sergeant answered, I think the best, and he says, "We master the basics." Like SF, like they're not super soldiers. They just have perfected the basics. They've perfected the foundation, to the point where like we don't think about that because it's not something we train every now and then. We have mastered it, and I thought that exactly, yeah, and I thought that was super interesting because that particular mindset can be translated to any field in life.
Did you learn any tools? Because I know you teach them after the fact, like of managing your mind, managing emotions, managing your breath. Because I would imagine once you become unconsciously confident about something, you don't have to manage anything. It's just you're in the flow state to most of the time.
Sure.
I would imagine. But like to get there, it takes some management of internal state.
Indeed. And during the queue and even a majority of my time on the teams, I wasn't like super into meditation. I have since gotten into it, and I think that would have been a game changer had I been more into it while on the teams. But to answer your question, during my medic training, uh, it was a it was a 9-month schoolhouse where they take somebody from zero, like I was, zero medical experience, all the way to like a trauma monkey that they could handle just about anything in a ditch if they needed to. But that requires a lot of repetitions and a lot of repetitions under stress, like managed, controlled stress that the cadre are imposing upon you. And so one of the things that I talk about in my book and that I encourage my clients to engage in is try to be the calmest one in the room. And in the back of my head, it's because like I want to be able to um, act appropriately in the midst of chaos. And you can only really manage chaos well when you have your emotions under control. And I'll take an example. My daughter was jumping on the trampoline one day and was trying to get off of the trampoline and just totally biffed it and swan dove into the deck, smashed her face. Luckily I was like right there, and so I scoop her up and I bring her inside. But I turned off dad mode in my brain, turned on medic mode, and so it was just like, all right, this is just a medic scenario that I'm running through. So I did like a quick neuro exam, checked her head and stuff like that. I was like, yep, probably need a CT just to be safe. And I could only do that if I had the repetitions and I was confident in my capability. And so my kind of equation to elicit calm in particular situations is confidence and clarity. Clarity being like, what is the desired end state that I want, and where does the confidence come from? And the confidence comes from, actually engaging in training that leads me to this point where I'm sure I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So
You had mentioned that you at Sealfield we talked about you can do 20 times more than you think you can do 20x, but you said it differently that you learned that you're capable of doing so much more than you thought you could do because you took the chance, you took the risk, the courage to go, try out army special forces. What other things surprised you about yourself that you're now taking into your work as a coach for other people?
that's a great question. Think, uh, I think what surprised me is there were periods I allowed ego to overshadow um, current situations, and what I mean by that is there after getting through selection, the Q course, and then being on the team for a while, there is opportunity to be overly confident in one's capability or one's maybe stature in life. Uh, in fact, this kind of relates, and it's my team and I were in Estonia, and we were at the gym together. We would all pile into a truck or a van and show up at the gym together, and all these barrel chested freedom fighters walking in this gym in Estonia, and it was awesome. It was like the best time of my life. But I remember this one time we were there, and my buddy Chris and I were talking. And we looked over at the leg press, and this young guy was there and just struggling, not a ton of weight. His form was all jacked up, and we started making fun of him. And then he gets up and he's got like cerebral palsy or something, and I'm like, that was a gut check, and it was like the ego will, if I allow the ego to take charge all the time, I will then begin to mistreat people, and that is not the kind of person I want to be. So being aware of that and keeping that in check thoroughly. So the confidence is important, but arrogance is, I think, dangerous.
Do you have any particular practices you do to humble the ego in that way?
I've started to view the ego a little bit different, like particularly this past year. I envision the ego as like this overzealous, slightly older brother, and the image I have in my head is like I'm 7 and my ego is 9,
Okay.
and if somebody threatens me, he does his best as a 9-year-old to protect me, like, maybe shouting expletives or like pushing or shoving or fighting, because that's like all the 9-year-old brain can tolerate, right? And even in the gym situation I just described, it's like, yes, let's put other people down so we feel better and stronger and bigger. And now when I recognize that like 9-year-old voice creeping in my head, I'm like, hey buddy, I appreciate the love. I appreciate your attempt at protecting me or trying to boost me. I'm gonna take it from here. And it's gonna
Yeah.
be okay, you know.
It's like hard work to a certain extent. And
Yeah, yeah.
okay, well, all right. And you're using awareness to hear the voice in your head that you can then interdict it and keep it from doing its thing if you so choose.
Indeed. And meditation has helped me a great deal with that, is creating that separation between thoughts and emotions and who I actually am, that awareness. Because then creating that space, I then get to dictate which thoughts, which emotions actually get to carry weight in my life. And I get to be selective about that. And if it's a thought like, oh, that dude's a loser because he can't push on the leg press, that's not a thought I want to to allow into my life and dictate who I am. So I can be like, all right, I'm gonna set that aside and ignore it, you know.
That's cool. So you go from reactive to responsive, but you don't have to take action on this.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of good lessons being a Green Beret.
Yeah. One or two for sure.
Yeah. 2000 or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So why a coach after you left the army?
That's a great question too. My best friend, Brad, he and I have known each other for literally decades. He's a high performance coach for CEOs and stuff. And as I was getting out, he was like, "Hey man, you should really consider being a coach." I was like, "I don't know, dude. I don't know who I could help or like who would benefit from anything I have to say." And he was like, "Maybe just consider it." And so I kind of figured out what my style would be and wound up getting my first client. And then I realized, oh, I actually really like this. I enjoy teaching. And like kind of looking back on my life, a large majority of it has been teaching to some capacity. Like youth pastor a long time ago, wrestling coach, and then in the army, Green Berets. That's what they do. They teach a partner force, you know. And so it was almost a natural progression of kind of how my life has played out, is teaching. And that's kind of how I view my coaching, um, offering guidance when necessary and some guardrails as people are kind of bumping around and navigating through life, and then offering insight. Not saying that I'm necessarily an expert, but I'm like, hey, I've learned this particular lesson in this particular circumstance, and it's helped a ton. Maybe try it, you know.
So like you're a warrior scholar.
I like that. Yeah, maybe so. That'd be really cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I was thinking back when you talked about you working for the church or back in the day, you're a warrior for Christ.
Mhm.
Warrior for the United States and a warrior for your brothers next to you. And
Yep.
now you're a warrior for your client, fighting for them to fight for themselves, but also scholars who love to teach and learn. So that's where my mind came with that.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm curious on the faith thing. You said that you had some intrapsychic conflict around faith. Has faith come back in any new or useful ways or unique ways for you, or is that not a part of your life?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that or asked that question because, yeah, sure enough, I've returned to the flock, and it was an interesting circumstance. I've had the good fortune of working with various foundations like Special Forces Foundation, where they help veterans or people that are struggling with particular things, using various psychedelic modalities like DMT or psilocybin to help navigate some of that junk. As a result, I got interested in it and started kind of taking my own journeys using psilocybin. And I remember one night I was on my bed in the middle of my journey, and it just got super dark, super fast. Um, like like I could hear voices saying, like, "Dude, just go end it," you know, like it's not worth it, you know, just stop. And the dangerous one was like, "Hey, man, if you end it, you can rest. You can finally rest." And I was like, Dude, I am under attack." And when I was on the teams, when we would do CQB, like clearing rooms, you would I was taught, you know, dig your corner, and if you run into a problem, immediately yell support. It lets everybody in the room know that, hey, you're dealing with something, to come help once they're done with their jobs in the room. And that was actually my prayer back to God. I was in my bed hearing all this junk, and I was like, support, support. And at that moment, God showed up and like pushed all of that negativity back like a cordon. And I could still sense it, but he was right there. And I was like, hey, God, it's been a while. Let's hang out. And so this past like year and a half or so has been kind of my journey back into faith. Yeah.
Well, wow, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's interesting to note on the psychedelics, changed the culture. Thank goodness, thank God. the mindset's shifting and they're becoming more and more available. At least, I mean, you can go to Mexico, of course. You can go to other countries, but you can also do like ketamine clinics are legal here in the United States. I could imagine that psilocybin and MDMA, depending on the Trump administration, and RFK, hopefully be available for medical use in the very near future. So it's very promising.
And I'm super excited about that. For sure, psychedelics you can party on them if you want, and yeah, they're a good time. But I think people that engage in it in just that manner are missing out on the capability that the medicine actually has to offer, which is, um, at least in my own experience, it was a great deal of healing when I engage in those journeys and those different modalities. It's like it forces you to kind of wrestle with self-reflection and introspection and kind of deal with some junk that maybe you'd shoved down way down deep for too long. And I, yeah, I'm excited about kind of the direction that some of those things are going.
Let me ask you a question on specific to the psychedelics. 'Cause I do work with a lot of veterans, and I find that during their sessions, for instance, it's not even combat. It's usually something prior to combat from their childhood really set the stage for them wanting to be a special operator and maybe capable of being a special operator. And I don't have a large population to make this a claim, but I'm curious, is that what you've also seen and experienced yourself?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and at least anecdotally, yeah, it is oftentimes junk from when we were kids, and in my own circumstance, like the common theme is often like my mom died when I was 6, and that is definitely a wound that I just buried. Uh, Incidentally, though, the medicine helped me realize that like that particular wound was influencing subtly almost every decision I've made in my life, and often manifesting in like I keep people at arm's length and like don't get too close because you're going to be gone one day, you know. And and I remember one journey in particular. Um, I was kind of navigating the storm, and it plopped me right in front of that moment, like when mom died. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this. Let's do something different. And the medicine's like, no, just sit there. I was like, daggone. So I'm like weeping in my bed and just having to face it. And I was like, all right, cool. Now what? Like, all right, it's a wound. What do you want me to do? He's like, well, God or whatever, maybe my subconscious is like, it is a wound. You can't unwound yourself. But at the very least, you are now aware that that wound can influence everything if you allow it. So again, it created a little bit of separation.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, it created a little bit of separation, and now I can observe it. And it's like when a thought comes in, it's like, where's that thought actually coming from, and do I want to allow it to carry weight? And oftentimes I'm able to kind of navigate things a little more clearly and with more love towards the other. You know.
Nice.
Yeah.
As well. So I've heard medicine as kind of a tool. I've heard meditation as a tool. Are there other tools that you use and or teach your clients?
Yeah. In my book and kind of in my whole coaching philosophy, I admittedly I wrote the book when I was still a non-believer, and so second edition is going to have like a spiritual component to it as well. But as of right now, I break life down into multiple categories. So there's mental, physical, emotional, social, financial, and the intent behind that is if you're lacking discipline in one area, it will bleed over into the others. And so if we just attack all of the categories and get discipline in each of them, you're on the right track. In the second edition, I will probably shift some things around and put physical first. And the reason behind that is the the physical body is kind of like foundation. If you are unhealthy and not exercising, not moving your body, not getting sunlight, not drinking water, not sleeping well, everything else it has a cascade effect on like everything else. And so if you can establish like a pretty decent foundation, and I'm not saying go be Mr. Olympia or an Iron Man athlete, but I'm saying like, dude, if you can move your body, get good sleep, hydrate and eat well, that's a great foundation to start on, and then you can build from there. And so I often, when I'm working with clients and they're like, man, I'm hitting this plateau in the gym, or I'm like struggling with the wife, or business is kind of like weird. I'm blowing up at my employees. Like, one of the first things I say is like, how's your sleep? Are you sleeping well? And they're like, no, I'm sleeping like 3 hours a night. Well, let's try that first. you know, Sleep is like the most underrated nootropic out there. Like, if you get decent sleep, it is a game changer. And making that a priority is so huge. And I know I'm kind of getting on my soapbox and getting stoked, but it, I look at sleep this way. Like, I used to think, man, what a waste of time. Why do I have to be in a coma for 8 hours every single day? And then I kind of started looking at it a little bit differently. It's rather like, during sleep, we're not gathering food, and we're not or procreating. Um, However, we as a species have evolved to require about 8 hours every single day just to just to be unconscious, which from an evolutionary standpoint is bananas. Which means it's so important that if we've been able to evolve to this point, that that is what we require. Like, there's something to it. And so um, prioritizing sleep has been definitely one of the things that I try to instill into my clients often.
It's funny, parallel. I have one of my pillars is physiological. Everything you just named, I do. When I'm interviewing, people say, "What's like the two most important things?" I said, "Sleep and kindness."
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So on the physiological side, so on the coaching, you mentioned your buddy kind of recommended to you. You checked it out. You got into it. You really liked it. You're obviously good at it. You have a newer affiliation, mentality. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you do with them and what they're up to and how you got
Yeah.
into that space?
Yeah. Absolutely. Anybody that doesn't know who Nick Lavery is, please go check him out. His story is phenomenal. He's the only above the knee amputee to go back to combat, which is just bananas to think about. He is an absolute behemoth of a dude, but he's so kind. Like, he's just a great guy. Anyway, so last year he wound up approaching me. He's like, "Hey man, I'm kind of standing up this division within my ecosystem. I think you'd be perfect for heading it up. Are you interested?" And so we had negotiations kind of back and forth. I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And so his nickname is Machine, partly because he's huge, probably partly because he's got a prosthetic leg too. So under machine, we have machine strength, which focuses primarily on, training regimens and different programs and stuff to get in shape. We have machine vitality, which does very custom tailored supplementation based on blood work. And so it's like dialing in exactly what kind of minerals that you're and vitamins that you're deficient in. And then machine mentality, which is kind of my wheelhouse. Um, and it kind of focuses on creating mental resilience, but also being intentional with the the life that you are designing, and creating a clear identity to operate from, and then through that establish like very very specific long term goals that then we backwards plan and figure out exactly what is required on a daily level to achieve those goals. And so again, I am absolutely stoked to be working with Nick. It's been awesome so far.
So just so I'm clear for the viewing and listening audience, you're kind of helping with the structure of the whole program. Are you also coaching within the program too?
Yeah, so within mentality, I'm essentially the head coach right now. So I offer one-on-one coaching for sure, and then since I got out of the army and started coaching, I've when I first started, it was just one-on-one, and almost everybody was like, "Dude, where do I find a community like me that thinks like me?" I was like, "I don't know, man. It's tough." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I should probably just start one."
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so for the past like 3, almost 4 years, I have this community that's kind of followed me around from platform to platform, and they are just phenomenal. And so, yes, under machine mentality, you could do one-on-one coaching with me, or I also have a group of individuals that get together multiple times a week. In fact, we've got a call today that I'm stoked about, and we just get together. And when we first started it, I was trying to teach, and the calls were often like 30 minutes or so. It has now evolved into almost like a think tank. These high performing individuals from all different walks of life, all over the world, really. We get together, and I'll offer a thought that maybe I'm still kind of pulling the thread on and trying to wrestle with. I just toss it in front of them, and then they chew it to pieces and then hand it back to me, and it's just so great. It's stimulating mentally, and then we're also getting a lot of value from each other, because it's no longer like teacher student. It's like now we've become almost peers in a tribe that are
Yeah.
wrestling with a particular thought.
That's awesome. So if someone listening to this or viewing this, they're like, "Oh, I want to work with Chris."
Yeah.
Go to machine mentality, find your individual work and the tribe that you've created.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Plus, you've written a couple books. Tell us a little bit about both the books you've written.
Yeah. So, Beyond the Battlefield, ever since I was little, I've always kind of wanted to write a book. I just didn't know what it would be about. And then a publishing company approached me on social media and was like, "Hey, have you considered writing a book?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we worked together, and in about 6 months, I was able to encapsulate my whole coaching philosophy within the pages of the book, and I throw some fun stories in there as well. And and then I caught the bug, and I'm like, I want to do more. And so I created Legacy Forge, which is more of a workbook than like an actual like read through book. There you go. Excellent. Thank you. Um, but it's designed as like almost a companion book to Beyond the Battlefield. It includes like a 90-day planner where every morning you get to lay out like intention, goals, things that need to be done. And then at the end of the day, an after action review, like, well, how did I do? What worked well? What didn't? And then kind of move on from there. But I did catch the bug, and now I've got a couple more I'm working on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about those. The next one, man, it's been tough.
Mm.
uh, I, but it'll be called Beyond the Serpent, referencing the Ouroboros, which is this snake that's eating its own tail.
Yeah.
And I guess the synopsis or the thesis behind it is, as the snake devours the portions of itself that are no longer necessary, that's what gives it the strength and nourishment to grow and become better. And it's like, yep, that's life. Oftentimes excellence doesn't come from an accumulation of more things, but rather an elimination of the unnecessary. And so you're excavating, you're like pulling things away and throwing away junk and allow things to dissolve and be devoured. And until what you're left with is like who you actually are, your true identity laid on a foundation of peace of like, I don't need somebody else's validation to be firm in who I am and how I operate. So that's going to be the next one. I'm pretty stoked about it.
That's really cool. Visually, what comes to mind is like a sculptor, like you just have a stone or marble, then you
Yeah.
V and negative as not this, is not this, it's not that, and you have your beautiful artwork.
100%. That's exactly right. Yeah, and I actually use that analogy often in some of my teaching. Is whether you're working on your personal identity or your life's purpose, and sometimes you don't know exactly what it is, but you know exactly what it's not. So I
Mm.
can chisel off that piece and then that piece, and then after a while, some form starts to take place, and then you get the fine tools out and start to smooth it out and make it look real good.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do we have a date that we can read this new book or not yet?
I had hoped that it would be done by Q1 of this year. That clearly didn't happen. Um, I had I had almost a quarter of it, like, done, laid out, and, like, feeling good about it, and then I was like, "I need to retweak this." And so not a full back to the drawing board, but I eliminated a majority of what I had written already. So my hope is by the end of this year, but but I'm gonna let it evolve naturally, and when it comes out, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to have you back on to talk about the book.
Ab
Uh,
absolutely, yeah.
what question have I not asked you that you'd love to answer?
Wow, that's a great question. This is something that I do often like to share with folks. And so the question would be like, what's a great piece of advice that you would offer anybody in any stage of life? And I received this piece of advice during selection. It was right after like a team week event. And me and the crew were just like busted up and tired and dirty and hungry. And the cadre sets us down and he's like, listen up, men. Everybody's going to have a bad day. The trick is having more good days than bad. And I just let that sink in because it's accurate. Perfection is nearly impossible. So when you have a day where you didn't quite meet the standard, you didn't quite measure up to what you were supposed to, acknowledge it, don't make excuses, own it, and then just make tomorrow better and try to accumulate more good days than bad.
So it's like a Kaizen, 1% better every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I love that. Great
Yeah.
piece of advice. So people are listening to this, they're like, man, I want to read Chris's stuff. I want to work with Chris. How do they find you digitally?
Yeah, I'm on social media, so TikTok and Instagram. It's coach_Chris.Lee. And then my books are on Amazon, so Beyond the Battlefield and Legacy Forged.
Awesome. Definitely include all the links in the show notes. People can click on you and follow you on those different platforms. Obviously, you can buy your book as well. Chris, I really appreciate your time and enjoyed this conversation.
It was an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.